Let us talk about reorder point planning. Reorder point planning suggests a new order for an item when the available quantity on hand plus planned received quantity drops below the safety stock level plus forecast items for the item during its replenishment lead time. Reorder point planning uses demand forecasts to decide when to order a new quantity to avoid dipping into safety stock. Oracle Inventory automatically generates a requisition to inform purchasing team that a reorder is required to supply your organization in order to fulfill. It is generally used for costly items. It is always implemented at organization level. It depends upon the consumption basically. Responsibilities involved in the reorder planning are inventory responsibility, material planner, and purchasing responsibility. Okay, the steps involved in the reorder point planning are: first, we need to have an item created at the organization. Template needs to be applied, like purchase template needs to be applied. List price needs to be defined under purchasing under purchasing tab. List price needs to be defined, and then under lead time we need to provide pre-processing, processing, and post-processing time. Pre-processing time is nothing but demand raised to till purchase requisition. Once the demand has been raised to up until requisition approved, purchase requisition approved time, this is pre-processing time. And processing time is nothing but supplier manufacturing time plus delivery till date time. Post-processing is nothing but time taken to move the goods from gate to the inventory. Okay, from the inventory. Example like iron ore coal from goods, like iron ore. Okay, coal from goods train to production unit, for example. At the same time, under general planning tab, we need to choose which planning method we are using, and as well as we need to choose the source type. Generally we have three: supplier, inventory, and sub inventory. From that we are gonna choose supplier here. And a fixed lot multiplier, we need to define the quantity of lot, each lot we can define here. And there is no need of defining min max quantities here. Later we'll define no need of defining min max quantity here. Later we'll define the min max order quantity when required basically. And then min-max quantity won't play any role here. Min-max order quantity will be defined out running the reorder point planning. For the we are gonna check three cases. First, for the first case, there is no need of defining min-max order quantity. Okay, when we define we will to check the two other cases, we are gonna define min-max quantities. If there is a delay in any of the processing lead time, then it will impact the entire process and creates the issue in replenishment. Later on, what we do is we are gonna create demand forecast. Here we define the forecast as per the previous observations from the here we define the forecast as per the previous transactions for the forecast sets. Through inventory planning forecast sets, we are gonna define this. Initially what will happen is inventory planning forecast sets. On selection of sets, we'll get a pop-up error message saying that we'll get a pop-up error message. Okay, whereas we will get a pop-up error message. In order to overcome that, what we need to do is we need to add responsibility called material planner. We need to add a responsibility called material planner to user login, and then go to material planning setup parameters. Just modify, update the existing window. Just go to material planning setup parameters, and just modify, update, or enable the checkbox. This is used for advanced supply chain planning qualification. Once this is done, just go back to the previous screen again. Like as I mentioned, inventory planning forecast sets. Here it's a 4-level hierarchy basically. It's like first we have like forecast. We are gonna create a forecast. Against each forecast set, forecast items, and forecast entries. This is a 4-level hierarchy. On selection of forecast, a window will open where we define forecast sets. Against each set we are gonna define the forecast item, and against each item we are gonna do the entries. Forecast entries will be done. Here we have one of the major field called bucket type. Bucket types will be like day, 3 days, week, month, and the label is equal to item. I'll be showing the same in the system. Before that, getting into the application, I'm just showing this. Every forecast will have multiple forecast sets, like for example, okay, June, July, August, September, October, or we can define even seasons, or else even we can define countries, months, and so on. here monthly or recently or okay. Next, safety stock. Safety stock is a stock kept in reserve for any urgent requirement. This is an optional setup actually. Okay, safety stock is stock kept in reserve for any urgent requirement basically. Through inventory responsibility planning, safety stock item will be defined. Safety stock item will be defined. Safety stock is also known as buffer stock. In the this is the extra inventory kept on hand to prevent stockouts due to unexpected fluctuations in demand or supply. It adds up the buffer to ensure a business. Okay, and we don't have any manual entry to achieve this. Through tools reload option we are gonna submit this, we are gonna define this by submitting the concurrent program reload safety stock. By using the method user defined percentage and safety stock percentage, we will achieve this safety stock. Once this is been achieved, then we need to submit a concurrent program called reorder point planning by selecting forecast against which we are submitting this. We have three conditions here. Okay, restock is equal to no for normal case, for the initial case, and then in case if the company don't want, if the company don't want the whatever the reorder quantity we have achieved, if the company don't want, if they want only maximum quantity of half of it, then we are gonna submit a, we are gonna define, we are gonna check more condition by defining at the item master for the specific child, or we are gonna define the maximum quantity, and then we are gonna submit this concurrent program again. And in the latter part we can check one more case by keeping minimum order quantity. Okay, and after this we are gonna submit a concurrent program. Request import concurrent program will be submitted. After submission of this with the source type as selected, a requisition will be created and approved as well. Later by using the same requisition we can create a purchase order by using auto create option, or we can, okay, we can create a purchase order and later on we are gonna approve the same. As well as on top of the purchase order, what we are gonna create is we are gonna create a receipt, we are gonna create a goods receipt note. Okay, and we'll save the same. Later on we'll check the stock. These are the steps involved in here. Whereas what I do is, let me get into the application to try defining the same. So first, as I mentioned, go to the inventory responsibility to create an item. Items, master items, th. Okay, what I do is I'll just define the name of the item as I'll take the name of the item as carbon mobiles, for example. Okay, carbon mobiles. I'll just define the name of the item first. I'll just create the item. We need to apply the template, so let me apply the template. Go to tools, copy from, I'm applying a template called purchased, apply the same, done. Now first what we need to do is, template got applied, go to inventory, check all these are enabled by default. Whatever the attributes I have under my template, that will be loaded here. Now go to purchasing tab and define the price here. And defining the list price, nothing but the price of purchasing. Up to this price we can purchase, we can make a purchase. Then you go to general planning. Okay, and then we need to choose the planning method, reorder point planning. And you will be able to see here make or buy means it's a buy item. Under source type we need to choose it as a supplier. Okay, we need to choose it as supplier. It was I have chosen as supplier because we are getting this source of the goods is from supplier. And then if you want to define, we can define the same. I can say fixed order quantity, order modifiers, lot. Okay, lead times, go to lead times. We can define, as I mentioned, pre-processing before once the demand raised to, once we got the demand from until the PO requisition time, how much time it is, 1 day if I am saying. And processing time, once the PO is approved, and sent to supplier. Supplier received to manufactured and sent it to goods to our inventory. That will be 1.5 day. I'm just keeping for example. And post processing, after the goods are received, after the goods are ready, picking from the point to sending it to our inventory, that will be my 1 day. For example, if I say, okay, just say, and is there any other fields? Yeah, go to general planning and fixed order quantity, modifiers, qualifiers, and what I do is I'll just make it as 30 fixed lot. I'll just make it as 30 here, for example. Okay, and that's it. Now what I do is go to general planning. 1.5 I have given general planning. Okay, done. So before that, what I do is I just make a note of this item. Save. Just up, copy paste, do the organization assignment. Just do the organization assignment. I want to implement a th. Go to general planning and check. I'm just verifying it whether everything got selected by default or not. By default it will be chosen. So I want to implement this as Tata Hyderabad inventory arc. So it is getting displayed here. Save it. Save it. Close. So first thing is like I have created an item, applied template, did changes, defined lead time, and chosen the planning method which we are implementing, and the source which we are, and even the organization assignment is done. Now what we need to do is, generally what we need to do is we need to go to now we need to create a forecast demand. For that, what we need to do is we need to go to inventory, inventory planning, forecast. We need to define forecast sets. Click on sets, and we need to define. In generally, what will happen is on selection of this, we'll get an error message. Okay, on selection of this, we'll get an error message. In order to overcome that, what we need to do is we need to add the responsibility material planner. Go to system administrator. General already I have added it, and even I have disabled it. What I do is let me go back to my user login, function F11, So this, sorry, so I just want to enable this part because we are gonna use this. Go to material planner data, so it will be displayed now. Go to the responsibility material planner data, which I have customized, which I have defined customized. So what we do is go to the setups, and parameters. We need to come here and we need to just choose the organization against which we are implementing. And just what I have done is I just modified and updated it. If you enable the checkbox, what will happen is it will be useful at one supply chain planning. So I just saved it. After this we don't get any error message. So I'm just showing that I'm just giving info how what we are gonna face. Okay, if material planner is not exist, so I'll directly go back to my planning again. I'll try to define my forecast. Click on forecast sets, choose the Tata Hyderabad inventory organization where I am implementing. Provide the name of the item. We are creating forecast set under which we want to add forecast set. What I do is I'll just give the name of it as carbon GRP. For example, I'm taking the name as carbon GRP. Okay, and under which we'll be able to see different fields here. Bucket type is nothing but days, weeks, period. We need to choose here, and level will be item, bill to ship to customer. These are the predefined options which I have. From that, by default it will be selected as item. Even I will be choosing this as item only. Bucket type, we have options like days, weeks, periods. From which I'm choosing it as days only. And under consumption options, we have by default these options are enabled, like consume, outlier, update, 100%, backward days 0, forward days 0. If you want to disable this, we can provide the date here, so it won't be shown in the future. Okay, and I'm just defining, as I mentioned here, it's a 4-level hierarchy forecast set, under which we are gonna define forecasts, and against each forecast we are gonna define the forecast items, and against each item we are gonna do the forecast entry. So what I do is I'm just gonna define forecast set. If you see here, we can define it as July. What I do is I'll just make it as July 2025. Okay, I will just define it as July 2025, and again I'll just define as July August 2025. September 2025. September 2025. September 2025. So if we want, we can define it, we can inactivate the same. Whereas what I want to do is I want to define against this. First save it off. Okay, first save it off, and what I want to do is I want to define against this forecast. For each forecast set we can have n number of forecast sets. We can define forecast sets. Against each forecast we need to define as per the previous observations. We are going to define the items. We are going to define this. Okay, now against each forecast set we can define forecast sets. Against each forecast we can define items. So what I do is I'll define item against forecast July 2025. I'll define a forecast item. First what we need to do is we need to choose the item. We have defined an item called carbon. If you remember. We have defined an item called carbon. We have defined an item called carbon. And then click on details. This is the item which we have created. Now against this item we need to define details. like we need to define details. Forecast entry needs to be done. What I do is I'll choose the date. It will be taken for 5 days. It will be as per the calendar. This will generate basically. If you are not able to define this, if you are not able to provide these dates, and if you are, when you are trying to define any date, if the date the system is throwing means error, means go to your calendar and check the date. Okay, that date of the calendar might be already like so, and what I need to do is number of buckets is 1, and the current we can define the stock. What I do is I'll just define it as 30, and then I'll go to next one again. And second one, what I do is I'll just make it as 25 for example. As per the previous observation, I am defining this entries. Actually, I am doing these entries. Bit internet problem. It is taking time to load. Basically, we will be able to do. So it is showing again. Go to the third one, third line item. What I do is I'll just make it as 0. For example, just see, I'll make it as 0. I'll just make it as 0. See here in the report, we can understand this, what will happen. And what I do is I'll make it as 30 here. And what I do is I think this will be my what I do is I'll just make it as 35 here. Again 19 and 20 won't be displayed here. (19) and 20 are holidays, Saturday and Sundays. So again what I do is I'll make it as 30 for example. And what I do is I'll just keep 23. Basically it should be 22, but what I do is I'll just make it as directly 23, and I'll just make it as here 25 for example, as per the forecast. Just to make it different, to differentiate this, I'm just trying to define such a values. Now what I do is, you see here 14th 30 I gave, 15th 25, 16th is 0, that is there is no entries on that day. On that 17th is 30, 18th is 35, 21 is 30, 23 is 25. Just save it off. So it will be saved here. So it got saved. Let me check again. It got saved. Yeah, it got saved. Now what you do is close this, and what you do is click on bucketed. You will be able to see the values. See, now we have defined from 14. We have multiple weeks here. 7th is 1 week, 14th is 2nd week, 21st is 3rd week, starts from 20th is 4th week, and 4th is 5th week. If you see, as per the calendar, week wise this is split. we haven't defined any entries for 7th week, first week, and under 14th to 20th we have defined some values. That values are getting loaded here. Okay, if you and for again 18 and 90 there is no entries, whereas for 21st I have defined some values. That total is 25, right? If you want to cross check how it has shown here, see for 21st and 23rd I defined the values of 30 and 25 is combination of 55. If I calculate these remaining 4 entries, 30 35 is 65, 65 plus 25 70, 80 90, 90 plus 30 120. So this is how these values are getting loaded. If you see here on selection of this, 120 is the quantity getting displayed under my second week, and coming to third week it is 55. Combination of my second week and third week it is showing as 175, right? So on selection of bucket we'll be able to see the values which are shown here. Let me save the same. What I do is I'll just go with only July entries. Okay, I'll just go with only July. Now what we need to do is we need to go to the second level. We have defined these entries. Now what we need to do is, as I mentioned, as I talked about date, system may not allow sometimes date. Why? Because your calendar might be ending. In that case we need to check, go to inventory, setup, organizations, parameters, calendars, and we need to extend the data calendar. Now what we need to do is we need to define safety stock. Okay, now we need to submit a concurrent program called we need to define safety stock first, and then what we need to submit. Go to inventory, save this. What I do is, first of all I'll just make a note of the item. Just a second, let me reconnect this. It is taking time. Now we have defined this. Now what we need to do is we need to define safety stock. Again, go to inventory, planning, safety stock, select this, and just say new, provide the name of the item, reorder is the item which I have created. Reorder point, say new, and say new, reorder, say okay. There is no need of defining any quantities here manually. What you do is directly go to tools, and say reload. On selection of this, automatically we will be able to see the safety stock. On selection of this, what will be happen is automatically a concurrent program will be submitted as reload safety stock. Selection all inventory items. Here we need to choose the item against which we are submitting. Name of the item, I want to just close this once. I just want to make a note of the item so that it will help me to go further. Reorder point, cancel this, So let me go back to the application, try reconnecting this same uh, issue with the internet. Okay, no. So what I do is I'll just make a note of this item name first, which will help me to not confused. Okay, reorder point here, choose it, and now go to tools, reload. On selection of this, it will take me to a window where we need to pass the name of the item, choose the item name, and here method will be automatically choosed as mean absolute deviation mad. From that, I don't want this, we need to define user defined percentage. So what user defined percentage needs to be chosen, and we have defined multiple forecasts, right, like July 2025 and then August 2025, right? From that we need to choose that's forecast against which we are submitting this. Okay, now mine is this one, July 2025 is the forecast. Against forecast set, name of the forecast set is carbon grp, so I'll choose that one. Against here thing is like we have chosen as specific item, so this item was defined against this specific forecast, so only this forecast alone getting displayed. If I remove this item, for example, clear this, say okay. If I remove this item, clear, okay, cancel. Okay, let me show in the other case. So I have chosen the forecast as well here, and we need to define the percentage, safety stock percentage. What I do is I'll just define it as 10%. Just say okay, and now we need to submit it. On submission of this, submit another request, no, we'll be able to see the report will be generated here, and we'll be able to see the reorder point. Now what we have done, we have submitted a concurrent program. Now the safety stock percentage, just go here, view details, oh no, sorry, and just go here, view output, it won't be displayed anything. Now what you do is close this, and just say provide name of the item and say find. See, this is the output which we got on submission of this report. See, if you remember here, for 14th I have given quantity as 30, for 15th I have given quantity as 25, for 16th I have given quantity as 40, for 17th why it is showing 0 is there, I haven't defined any quantity basically. Again, okay, I haven't defined any quantity for 18 as well. 19 and 20 are weekends, Saturday and Sunday. Again I defined the quantity for 21st. I define the quantity for 21st, that is 5. Define the quantity for 21st, and then I define the quantity for 23 as 4 and 24 as 3. Similarly, I define quantities for multiple. See if you see here, on selection of this, we will be able to see against which this forecast was created.